What if the love of your life demanded you sacrifice everything you were born into? How do you choose between the family that raised you and the man who makes you feel truly seen? And when the dust settles on your boldest decision, who really ends up paying the price? Lincoln Caldwell stood on the marble terrace of his family's Fifth Avenue penthouse, the New York skyline glittering like a promise he had never asked for. At 28, he was the only son of the Caldwell banking dynasty, the one groomed since birth to inherit the empire that spanned 3 continents. His father, Harlan Caldwell, expected perfection, Harvard, polo matches, and a wife from the right circle. But perfection had started to feel like a cage. That evening, at a charity gala for emerging artists, Lincoln met Gabriel Rivera. Gabriel was 26, a freelance photographer from Queens whose work captured raw human moments most people ignored. He had slipped into the event on a press pass, camera slung over his shoulder, eyes scanning the room with quiet intensity. When their gazes locked across the crowded ballroom, something shifted in Lincoln's chest, a pull he could not name yet. They talked for hours that night, tucked away on a quiet balcony. Gabriel spoke of growing up with a single mother who worked double shifts, of chasing light in the city streets because it was the only thing that felt honest. Lincoln listened, really listened, for the first time in years. By the end of the evening, they exchanged numbers, and Lincoln felt lighter than he had in a decade. The next weeks blurred into stolen afternoons. They met in Central Park, in tiny coffee shops in Brooklyn, anywhere the Caldwell name would not follow. Gabriel's laugh was easy, his touch careful, and for the first time Lincoln allowed himself to wonder what it would feel like to stop pretending. Yet every time he returned to the family townhouse, the weight crashed back. His mother, Eleanor, kept reminding him of the upcoming board meeting where he was expected to announce his engagement to a suitable heiress. His younger sister, Olivia, teased him about finally settling down. One rainy Tuesday, after a long walk along the Hudson with Gabriel, Lincoln sat alone in his office and stared at the family crest on the wall. The questions he had buried for years rose like tidewater. Who was he without the money, the name, the expectations? And more terrifying, who was he if he kept hiding the truth from the one person who made him feel real? He picked up his phone and texted Gabriel. "Can I see you tonight? I need to tell you something." Gabriel answered instantly. "My place." Doors open. Lincoln drove through the rain, heart hammering. When he stepped into Gabriel's small apartment filled with prints and half-developed film, he finally said the words he had practiced in his head for months. "I'm gay, and I think I'm falling in love with you." Gabriel's smile was soft, steady. He crossed the room and took Lincoln's hands. "I've known since the gala. I was just waiting for you to be ready." That night they talked until dawn, about fears, about futures, about the walls they would have to climb. Lincoln left at sunrise feeling both terrified and alive. For the first time, the cage had a crack. But cracks let in light, and light, he was about to learn, could also burn everything down. The following Monday, his father summoned him to the boardroom. Harlan's voice was ice. "There are rumors, Lincoln. People say you've been seen with some photographer from nowhere. I expect you to end it. The family name is not a joke." Lincoln met his father's eyes and felt the first real fracture in his chest. He said nothing, but inside, the decision had already begun to form, like a single drop of water that would eventually carve stone. 2 months passed in a fragile balance. Lincoln kept his relationship with Gabriel hidden from the family while slowly letting it reshape his days. Mornings now started with coffee at Gabriel's kitchen table instead of the Caldwell private dining room. Evenings ended with quiet talks on the fire escape, Gabriel's camera clicking as he captured Lincoln's face in the city glow. Gabriel never pushed. He simply existed, steady, patient, reminding Lincoln that love did not need marble floors to be real. Yet the pressure mounted. At a family brunch, Eleanor slid a velvet box across the table. Inside lay a 2-carat diamond meant for the daughter of a rival banker. "She's perfect for you, darling. Think of the merger it would secure." Lincoln stared at the ring and felt nausea rise. That afternoon he drove straight to Gabriel's studio and told him everything. Gabriel listened without interruption, then pulled Lincoln into a hug that lasted until the shaking stopped. "You don't have to choose today," Gabriel whispered. "But when you do, I'll be here." Lincoln began to change in small, irreversible ways. He quietly transferred small sums from his personal accounts into a trust Gabriel knew nothing about, seed money for the future he was starting to imagine. He skipped 2 board meetings, citing personal matters. Olivia noticed first. She cornered him in the library one evening, eyes sharp. "You're different." "Who is he?" He almost told her. Almost. Instead, he said, "Someone who makes me want to be honest." The first Real crack appeared at the annual Caldwell Foundation Gala. Lincoln arrived alone, as expected, but Gabriel was there covering the event for a magazine. Their eyes met across the ballroom exactly as they had the night they met. For one reckless second, Lincoln smiled, genuine, unguarded. A society photographer caught the moment. The next morning, the tabloids ran the photo with the headline, "Caldwell Heir and Mystery Man Share Secret Glance." Harlan's call came at 6 a.m. "My office." Now. Lincoln walked in to find his father pacing, mother seated with a face like stone. Harlan slammed the tabloid down. "End this farce, or I will cut you out of everything." The will, the trusts, the board seat, gone. Lincoln felt the room tilt. He looked at his parents and saw fear behind their anger. Fear of what the world would say, fear of losing control. In that moment, something inside him hardened. He said quietly, "I love him, Dad. And I'm not ending anything." The silence that followed was louder than any shout. Eleanor's hand flew to her mouth. Harlan's face turned purple. "You'll regret this, boy. Mark my words." Lincoln left the office without another word. Outside, rain had begun again. He drove to Gabriel's apartment, soaked and shaking. When Gabriel opened the door, Lincoln stepped inside and said the sentence that changed everything. "I'm done pretending. But I need to figure out how to walk away from all of it. Legally, cleanly, before they destroy us both." Gabriel searched his face for doubt and found none. He nodded once. "Then we figure it out together." That night they stayed up planning, not escape, but freedom. Lincoln contacted a discreet estate attorney in Boston. The papers he would need to sign were already forming in his mind. Full renunciation of inheritance, severance from all family trusts, a clean break. The cost would be everything he had ever known. The reward, he hoped, would be the man asleep beside him now. The attorney's office smelled of leather and old money. Rebecca Klein, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s, slid the thick folder across the mahogany desk. "This document, once signed and notarized, severs every legal tie to the Caldwell estate. You will retain nothing, no shares, no trusts, no future claim. Your father's lawyers will fight it, but if we file it correctly, they cannot stop you." Lincoln stared at the pages. His name was printed in formal type at the top. Gabriel sat beside him, silent support. Outside, Boston traffic hummed. Inside, Lincoln felt the weight of 28 years pressing on his chest. "I need to be sure," he said. "Not for me. For him." He glanced at Gabriel. Rebecca's voice softened. "No one is ever completely sure. But you're the only one who has to live with the choice." They left the office with the unsigned papers in a sealed envelope. Back in New York, Lincoln hid them in the bottom drawer of his desk. He continued attending family functions like a ghost, smiling, nodding, while inside he rehearsed the moment he would hand the document to his father. Gabriel's world offered contrast. They spent weekends in his tiny studio, developing film together, laughing over burnt toast. One Sunday, Gabriel showed Lincoln a new series, black and white portraits of queer couples in the city. "These people gave up everything too," Gabriel said quietly. "Some lost families. Some lost safety. But they gained themselves." Lincoln traced a finger over one image, a man holding another on a subway platform. The look on their faces was the same look he saw in the mirror lately, scared, hopeful, alive. The confrontation came sooner than expected. Harlan called an emergency family meeting at the Hamptons estate. Lincoln drove out alone, the envelope now in his briefcase. When he walked into the sunroom, the entire family was waiting. Harlan, Eleanor, Olivia, even Uncle Richard from Chicago. Harlan wasted no time. "We know about the attorney in Boston. We know what you're planning. You will stop this nonsense immediately." Lincoln set the envelope on the table. "I already stopped pretending. These papers are ready. One signature and the Caldwell empire loses its heir." Eleanor gasped. Olivia's eyes widened. Harlan's voice rose. "You would throw away generations of work for a man you barely know? Think of your mother. Think of the scandal. Lincoln looked at each of them. I've thought of nothing else for months. But I've also thought about waking up every day hating myself for choosing money over truth. I won't do it anymore. He slid the envelope toward his father. I'm not asking permission. I'm telling you what's going to happen. The room exploded. Accusations flew, selfishness, betrayal, mental breakdown. Lincoln stood through it all, heart pounding but back straight. When the shouting finally quieted, he said the last words he would speak in that house for a long time. I love you. But I love him more than I love this life. He walked out into the ocean wind. Behind him, the family he had known since birth watched their future heir disappear down the driveway. That night, Gabriel met him at a roadside diner halfway back to the city. Lincoln slid into the booth, exhausted but strangely light. It's done. I signed the papers this morning. The law firm is filing tomorrow. Gabriel reached across the table and took his hand. Right there in public, no hiding. Then we start over. Together. Lincoln smiled for the first time in days. The road ahead was blank, but for the first time it felt like his own. The filing hit the media like a bomb. Caldwell Heir legally renounces $4.2 billion inheritance for gay relationship. Headline screamed. Paparazzi camped outside Gabriel's building. Lincoln's phone exploded with messages, some supportive, most vicious. The first month was survival. Lincoln moved into Gabriel's apartment permanently. They slept on a pull-out couch because the bed was too small for two tall men and their fears. Lincoln took a job at a small nonprofit Gabriel had photographed for, entry-level grant writing, $40,000 a year. The contrast was surreal, from private jets to subway delays, from boardrooms to shared laundry. Gabriel never complained. He cooked simple meals, developed film late into the night, and held Lincoln when nightmares of regret woke him at 3 a.m. You gave up money, Gabriel said one night. But you gain mornings where you don't have to lie. Lincoln's family tried every angle. Lawyers sent cease and desist letters claiming undue influence. Eleanor called, voice trembling, begging him to reconsider for the family's sake. Olivia showed up at the nonprofit one afternoon, eyes red. Dad's had a heart scare. The stress is killing him. Please, Lincoln. Lincoln listened but stood firm. I offered to stay in their lives without the money. They chose the money. The lowest point came in late October. A major investor pulled out of the Caldwell Bank citing instability caused by family scandal. Harlan publicly blamed Lincoln in a television interview. My son chose personal gratification over legacy. The consequences are his alone. Lincoln watched the clip in Gabriel's studio, fists clenched. For the first time, doubt crept in, sharp, cold. Had he destroyed his family for love? Was he selfish? Gabriel found him staring at the frozen screen and simply sat beside him. No speeches, just presence. Slowly, Lincoln began to rebuild. He volunteered at an LGBTQ youth center on weekends, mentoring teenagers who faced the same fears he once had. One boy, 16 and freshly kicked out, reminded him why the fight mattered. You gave up billions so I could see it's possible, the boy said. Lincoln's eyes stung. Gabriel's career quietly took off. A gallery in Chelsea offered him a solo show, photos of the city's hidden love stories, including several intimate but tasteful portraits of Lincoln. The opening night was small, but the room filled with people who understood sacrifice. Lincoln stood beside Gabriel in a simple button-down, no designer labels, and felt richer than he ever had in a tuxedo. Yet the family's silence grew heavier. Christmas came and went without a single call. Lincoln told himself it was fine. But late on New Year's Eve, as fireworks lit the sky over Brooklyn, he whispered to Gabriel, I hope one day they see I didn't leave them. I just chose me. Gabriel kissed his temple. They will. Or they won't. Either way, we're still here. Spring brought the first real test of their new life. Gabriel received a prestigious grant to document queer elders across America. The project meant 3 months on the road. Lincoln encouraged him to go. His own job at the nonprofit had grown into a program coordinator role, but the thought of 3 months apart felt like losing air. The night before Gabriel left, they sat on the fire escape, sharing cheap wine. If you need to go back, Gabriel said softly, I'll understand. This life is harder than you planned. Lincoln shook his head. The only thing harder would be going back to who I was. While Gabriel traveled, Lincoln threw himself into work and therapy. He learned to sit with the grief of losing his family without letting it define him. He reconnected with a few old friends who had quietly supported him all along. Slowly, the panic attacks that had plagued him after the renunciation faded. Then came the call he never expected. Uncle Richard, the only family member who had stayed neutral, phoned at midnight. "Your father had a stroke yesterday. He's asking for you." Lincoln drove to the hospital in the Hamptons through pouring rain. The family was gathered in the waiting room, tense, exhausted. Harlan lay in the ICU, pale and hooked to machines. When Lincoln entered the room alone, his father's eyes opened. Harlan's voice was weak. "You came." Lincoln sat. "Of course I did." They talked for 20 minutes, halting, painful words. Harlan admitted the bank was struggling. Investors had fled. "I thought cutting you out would protect us," he rasped. "It nearly destroyed us." Lincoln felt no triumph, only sorrow. "I never wanted to hurt you. I just wanted to stop hurting myself." Harlan reached for his hand, trembling, frail. "I was wrong. About a lot of things." When Lincoln left the room, Eleanor was waiting in the hallway. She didn't hug him, but her eyes were softer than they had been in a year. "He's been reading Gabriel's photography book. The one from the show. He keeps it on his nightstand." That small detail cracked something open inside Lincoln. Not forgiveness yet, but the possibility of it. Gabriel returned from the road 2 weeks later. Lincoln met him at the airport with flowers and the news. They drove home in silence, then talked until sunrise, about boundaries, about healing, about what family could look like now. The legal papers remained filed. Lincoln would never reclaim the fortune. But something more valuable had begun to grow in its place: peace. 1 year later, Lincoln and Gabriel stood on a small beach in Montauk, barefoot in the sand. The sky was the same impossible blue it had been the night they met. Behind them, a modest cottage they had bought together with Lincoln's nonprofit salary and Gabriel's grant money overlooked the waves. No marble, no staff, just them. Gabriel's solo exhibition had toured 3 cities. Lincoln's youth program had expanded to 3 boroughs. They still argued about whose turn it was to do dishes, but the arguments ended in laughter. A letter arrived the week before, handwritten from Harlan. It was short. "I was wrong. I miss my son. If you'll have us, your mother and I would like to meet Gabriel properly. No money. No conditions. Just family." Lincoln had read it aloud to Gabriel on the porch. They had cried together, not from pain this time, but from the strange relief of doors reopening on new terms. Now, as the sun dipped toward the horizon, Gabriel turned to Lincoln. "Ready?" Lincoln nodded. They had planned a small commitment ceremony. No legal marriage yet, but a promise witnessed by the few friends who had stood by them. Simple vows, bare feet, ocean soundtrack. As they spoke their words, honest, unpolished, Lincoln felt the last pieces of the old cage fall away. He had given up billions and gained something the money could never buy: the right to love openly, to wake up without shame, to build a life that was truly his. Later, sitting on the porch with coffee, Gabriel leaned against him. "Do you ever regret it?" Lincoln looked at the man beside him, the one who had never asked for a cent, only for truth, and smiled. Not for a single second. The family reconciliation would be slow, imperfect. There would be more hard conversations, more awkward dinners. But Lincoln had learned the hardest lesson of all: love that costs everything is the only kind worth keeping. And in the end, the empire he left behind was never the real legacy. The real legacy was the man walking beside him into whatever came next, hand in hand, heart open, finally free. In the end, Lincoln's story isn't about losing billions. It's about discovering that the greatest wealth is the courage to live honestly. Families may fracture under prejudice and pride, but hearts can mend when we stop measuring love by balance sheets. The real lesson here is simple. Choose the person who sees you, not the life that hides you. Everything else is just noise.